beautiful. So now talk to me about your music. What's the overall theme in your music, and is there a specific genre?
Yeah, the overall theme. Um, I think the overall theme, my partner would say, is love and now. Those are the
Okay.
two big themes in my life, are sort of um, the varying angles of approach that we have in love, towards love, away from love, um, and then nowness, right? This idea of being present and being in a field of sort of awareness of all that is happening to us and through us and with us and in us. Um, and I know those are big sort of themes. Love, obviously, every musician's writing about love, so that's kind
Well,
of
but you
a
know what? And so as you say that, it makes me think about your upcoming release. So you want to talk about that because that's definitely about
oh
love, maybe love gone wrong, right? Kind
yeah,
of.
yeah, kind of. I don't think it was love gone wrong. I mean, because the and without getting too specific in it, there is a person that inspired this song, and it's really in an interesting way. The song is a lot about um, kind of consent and and sort of trying to be in a new situation with someone who there's clearly love between the two of you, but the next move is neither can anticipate it, right? Like,
Mhm.
and so you end up sort of like swooping in and grabbing these little chunks of a person and going, is this it? Is this the thing I'm looking for? And then pulling out a piece of yourself and going, is this the thing you're looking for? And it's like this sort of interesting back and forth. And oftentimes when love becomes over intellectualized or over philosophicalized, like you lose something of the potential holistic nature of love, right? Like the totality of yourself, being in love, being in unconditional state of love and surrender and all that. Like when you start to really overthink it, you lose some of that. So there's like certain parts in the song where I even allude to like, you'd rather read it in a letter, so let me tell you something, right? Like it's this
Yeah,
idea
okay.
of like I wanted to show you all of me, but you just kept wanting to take pieces of me. And like,
Mhm.
so let me strip this, let me write this out for you exactly what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. And it's sort of, there's a degree of snarkiness in it, there's a little anger, there's a little sense of like um indignation of like, oh, how dare you take
Well,
only
see, and
part of me, like
that's where I got the love gone wrong. That's why
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I felt that piece in it. But then I also felt that another piece in it where it was like, oh my God, it had me even thinking about some of my relationships,
yeah,
and because it's like when you said you took a piece of me, it's like, really? And then you just bounce, like, really?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
so there's when it comes to the whole consent thing too, that which is a big, also a big theme, an overarching theme in my music. It's just like it's autonomy and consent and conversation around what you're willing to give to someone or take from someone, etc. But there's like a whole fantasy part in the song as well that like sort of goes into like, this is what could have been, this is
mhm.
where I saw, this is my daydream, and then it comes back into reality and stuff. um but yeah, I think that, I think it is in some ways love gone wrong, in the sense that it wasn't like the one and it didn't last forever. But I think in so many ways those are some of the most informative relationships we have, are those relationships where like we do kind of come in and go, is this it, is this it, is this it? Because you find when you start carving out pieces of yourself, or when someone else starts taking pieces of you and analyzing them and over analyzing them, it really does do something to allow you to sort of go, well, let me look, I've never really looked at it that way, I've never
Yeah,
really thought
yeah.
about it that way. And I think that is universal, like, and that again comes to, it circles back around to that dynamic idea of like being in the present moment with something. Like when you step outside of that, if you get too far outside of it and you get too in your head or too in the dynamic of a relationship, and you're not actually focused on, on intuition, on love, on heart, on all those things, that really make relationships work, and communication, very open
Well,
communication.
you know what? And then the other thing too, and this is not just for romantic relationships, what I was speaking of, it's also just in relationships, period.
Totally.
So it's,
Totally.
so this song is not just about romantic relationships, it's about friendships, it's about even parent and child,
Yeah.
know?
And that's it's an interesting word choice, because I have this sort of mindset, I think, that it doesn't let me separate those for some reason, like the idea of friends and lovers and even some family, that there is an idea of romance that goes
Yeah.
through all that. And that's kind of me, right? Like I'm sort of this crooner
Well,
boy.
that's Frankie Jupiter, and you got to tell me
Yeah,
about this
totally.
name. Tell me about Frankie Jupiter. What does that mean? What is that all
Yeah,
about?
it's a lot of things. It's a reference to a lot of artists who I love. It's a reference to the place that I was in when I decided to do this thing. Frankie, San Francisco, Frankie Valley, Frank Sinatra, and then the words together, the name together, Frankie Jupiter, is sort of like this. It has a ring to it.
Yeah, it does.
And it's a big homage to Freddie Mercury,
Okay.
which is F name with an I at the end, and then planet
Okay.
with three
Beautiful.
syllables. So yeah, and it was one of these things where when I did decide, so going kind of hopping back to when I decided to work with Arnie and vice versa, right after that happened, I was sort of like, I was moving. I moved to Indonesia, and I was going to be living there for an indeterminate amount of time, and working with a plastics upcycling organization, Ecstatic Ocean Initiative, and just kind of totally radically changing my life, because I needed something. I needed a new chapter. I needed a reincarnation of myself. And so I found myself in Indonesia, and sort of starting to get back into, because I'd taken a pretty long hiatus from music and from being overtly creative. And so I started getting back into it and started writing poetry, writing music again, playing a little bit, picked up a guitar while I was there, and just was really starting to be like, yo, I could see myself actually maybe doing this. Like, I had already teased the idea with Arnie, but I only half believed it, and he only half believed it.
Okay.
And so then I kind of just said, okay, am I going to do this? Like, if I'm going to do this, this needs to be a total overhaul of what I've been doing, which was largely image based, not sound based. There was a lot of photography, videography, design, website building, and all that kind of stuff. And so I had to sort of like shift gears. And as I began that process of shifting gears, I sort of found Frankie.
Okay.
I found Frankie Jupiter, and this character was, part of it came through dreams, part of it came through a dream I had when I was probably 15 years old, that I
Okay.
just kind of remembered again, which was this. I woke up from this dream, and it was this crazy, like, long series of mathematical equations, which meant nothing to me, but there was a number churned out at the end, and that number was 34.369446, and it was called the Aquinas wave. And so I was like, oh, okay. I know, and I'm still trying to figure out what it actually means, or if it doesn't mean anything, but I've used it as a sort of kind of like anchoring tool throughout my life to do various things. So when I turned 34, that was a big birthday for me. When I, if I ever were to play the lottery or something, I would probably choose numbers related to that. Those numbers have significance to me. There's like this whole sort of overarching thing, but I put together, when I got back from Bali, I put together a sort of demo that was about an hour long, of just one song bleeding into the next, bleeding into the next, bleeding into the next, bleeding into the next. And I called it the Aquinas wave. And I sent it to Arnie, and I said, look, man, because he'd never, at this point, he was sort of like, maybe I'll work with you, but he'd never heard my music. And so,
okay.
so I was like, okay, here you go. This is what I'm capable of. And he listened to it and was like, okay, all right, this needs a lot of work, but I think there's really something here. And that was sort of the moment where it solidified for me, like, hey, you're doing this. Like, adopt that character, whatever it takes to become the person who is doing this. And what that was for me was Frankie Jupiter. It was this sort of cosmic, you know, that the highest parts of myself that I could think to reach. And in so many ways it is, you know, I've done all these other things, I've lived all these other lives, I've helped so many people achieve their dreams and starting up their businesses or getting their bands on the road and having success with what they're doing. And I was like, why wouldn't I want to do this for myself? Like, that is ultimately the for me, it feels like the highest form of myself is creating music in a way that is conscious, in a way that's connected to the things that I love and carries the messages that I think are near and dear to me and are universally in some way enlightening. I mean, not to toot my own horn, because I certainly fall short of it all the time, but to strive towards that and to create that character of Frankie Jupiter. And then within the name, obviously, there is Jupiter. There is the sense of this giant body in the sky that is surrounded by all these orbiting moons and has all this mystique and power, and has been such a prominent sign through astrology and mythologies of the past. And, you know, Jupiter, aka Zeus, like sort of creative body. I think that was a big part of why Jupiter. Also, again, Freddie Mercury, man, it just rang. It just felt right. I love Freddie so much.
And I'm sure he is definitely smiling at you because you're keeping his memory alive in the hearts of others. So I'm sure his fans will connect with you in a way also because of the fact that, you know, you hold him so dear to your heart, to the fact that your name is very similar to his.
I hope so. That's cool. That's a cool thought.
No, I really believe that. Now, the other thing, you always, again, lead into what my next question is.